Well, here we are. It is that time of year. It is the end of the year. So it is time to do the top 10 greatest books that I read this year for another time running. So welcome back. If you are new here and you've never been here before, welcome on in. We do this every year. It's a blast. Real fast before we get started, this is my spreadsheet. I always do a spreadsheet. I will always do a spreadsheet, but I keep track of the books that I have read every single year. I'm currently at 56 books this year. I'm supposed to read 2 more before the end of the year, which would put me at 58, which is like the most books I've ever read in a year, like ever, which is just crazy. I know that sounds like low. All these other YouTubers are like, I read 150 books this year. When? How? Get to... No, anyway. You're all liars. Nobody can read that fast. Anyway, I'm just kidding. I personally can't read that fast. I read 58 books this year, which to me crushed all of my previous records. I think my previous record was last year and it was like 51 or 52 books. So 58 books this year. That's if I can get through Memories of Ice. I don't know if that's going to happen. That might, I'll start it this year, but that might actually end up on next year's spreadsheet because I don't know if I'm finishing that before the end of the year. I've got 2 weeks. I don't know. Also, real fast before I get into this list, I do want to say I have 2 honorable mentions for this list. One is Perdido Street Station by China Miéville. Fabulous book. Just barely missed being on this list. It was originally on it, but I had to knock it off so I could break one of my rules. And The City and Its Uncertain Walls by Haruki Murakami, who is just one of my favorite authors of all time. And that book was so wonderfully touching, and I loved it. I loved it. I got a little bit of pushback when I said that in the video that I did for it, because people were like, he's just telling the same story again. I don't care. It's wonderful, and he's wonderful, and he's good at telling that story over and over again. It's whatever. But anyway, honorable mention to those 2 books. Real fast before I actually get into the video here, the rules for these videos are I can't have rereads on this list. It doesn't matter. I didn't have any of those, so that rule doesn't even really apply. Then if I read a series, I can only put 1 book from that series on this list because what if the whole series was great and it was a 5-book series? Then that's half of my entire list. No, let's not do that. Then I normally have the rule of only 1 book per author. That way I don't have my list completely bogged down by one particular author or something like that, which I had to break that rule this time. You'll see when we get there. But I couldn't in good conscience not break that. It was an absolute necessity for me to break that rule this year. Anyway, let's get into the list, and we're going to start with number 10, and number 10 is Flowers for Algernon. Now, this book, I read this for the first time this year, and I cannot even express how amazing this book is. Flowers for Algernon is the book of scientists are trying to make people smarter, and they've come up with this procedure that seems to make rats smarter, and now they're going to attempt to move into human trials for the first time ever. And they pick a man who is mentally handicapped, and they're going to do this procedure on him, and then they're going to track him through the procedure and see if he gets smarter and how he gets smarter and what the consequences of how he blah, 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 blah. They follow him through this whole experiment. And this is one of the most touching stories that you will read, one of the most heartbreaking stories you will read. We not only follow him as he goes through the experiment, we follow how the experiment affects him mentally, how it affects him physically, how it affects his knowledge, how it affects his literal knowledge of facts, his emotional knowledge, his ability to handle what's happening to him and what is being done to him and how it affects him in his life and how people treat him before and after and during. It is a very difficult read. And I don't mean difficult as in prose or density. I mean emotionally it is difficult to get through. It will test your ability not to cry while reading a book. It really will. It is so fabulously touching. It is, I don't even know how to explain how good Flowers for Algernon is. It like I said, it about broke me. If you have not read The Flowers for Algernon, it is a genuinely fabulous book. I think it's technically science fiction, but you don't need to be a fan of science fiction to read it. You just need to be a fan of just good storytelling, flat out. Next up at number 9 is The Buried Giant by Kazuo Ishiguro. This is the third year running that Kazuo has been on my top 10 list of greatest books that I read. And the funny thing is, I've only read 3 of his books. I've so far read 1 every year, and every damn time he ends up on the top 10 list. He's just that good. He is one of my favorite authors ever, and I've only read 3 of his books. Like, that just, it doesn't even matter. But they continue to be the best things that I've read. The Buried Giant is probably maybe the weakest of the ones that I've read. I don't know. I'm not even going to put that down in yeah, probably. Anyway, what are we doing here? The Buried Giant is a story. It's of kind of like a fairy tale, almost like a folk tale. It takes place back in like medieval England, back in the days of like King Arthur times. And a mystical mist has descended over the land, and this mist makes you forget. And this is an old elderly couple that wants to go to the next village over to visit their son because they're getting older. They know they're getting older. They're reaching the end of their lives, and they want to see their son one more time before they die. Then they are so quickly forgetting things that they want to go before they forget to go, or before they forget about him entirely. And this is now a journey of this old couple over the countryside, through the mists that make you forget. And as we go through the story, we might just learn some things about them. We might learn things about their lives. They might remember things about themselves as they go through the story and the journey that they've forgotten over the years. And it is just so touching and so just, oh my gosh, it's so warm and inviting to read through. It's not action-packed or fast-paced. Nothing really is. It's just this real slow, touching tale of an elderly couple kind of reflecting on life, reflecting on the journey of life, the journey ahead, the journey behind. I don't know. And it is more a folk tale than a fairy, kind of like a fairy tale mixed with a folk tale, but done in Kazuo Ishiguro's just genuinely amazing ability to just touch your soul as he writes. It is, I can't say enough about his writing and his ability to just kind of touch something inside of you and just really, I don't even know. Read Kazuo Ishiguro. It doesn't have to be The Buried Giant, but it has to be something because he's one of the greats, period. Next up, we're going to get into the first of many series that I read this year that seemed to kind of want to take over my list this year, and that would be the Sun Eater series. So I had to pick my favorite book out of all of the Sun Eater series, and it's The Demon in White, right? No, it's not. It's Howling Dark. Howling Dark, I think I rated this the exact same as I did Demon in White, and actually I have another video that'll be coming out probably later this week for the next book. Anyway, that's not the point. I had to go with Howling Dark. It just, in my mind, it just edges out over top of Demon in White. I don't know why. It was just so much more fun. So much cool shit happening in this book. The Sun Eater series is kind of like the series about this man named Hadrian Marlowe, and he is, the author of the series sells it as if, what if becoming Darth Vader was the right thing to do? And it's kind of told from that age-old perspective of a man at the end of his life, and now he's going to go back and he's going to tell you the story of his life and how he became what he became, how he became Darth Vader, essentially, and destroyed an entire alien race, I think. How he became the Sun Eater and Hadrian the Half-Mortal and all these things that he is. But Howling Dark is the one where I jokingly referred to the first book in the series, The Empire of Silence, as, space gladiators with daddy issues. And this one's where it became like really good, like really genuinely good, and like the all of the ideas and the ancient constructs that live and exist deep down in the bowels of planets that have maybe been forgotten about, and just the oldest man in all of existence, a being that is like 10,000 years old. It's just oh God, this book is so good. It's true, genuine space opera. Like, it is like space fantasy, space opera, action-packed, just crazy. Nothing too heady, nothing too dense, nothing too philosophical happening here. True, genuine, fun adventure on a level that most books aren't functioning at in this day and age. And that's a level that I think most people are attempting to function on right now, is that just that high level action adventure fucking puts most of those to shame. Just fabulous. Next up is collection of short stories by my man Ken Liu, and it is The Paper Menagerie. This is the book. This is the book that broke the rule. I have the rule of no author should be on this list more than once, and this is the book that did it, because later on he'll be in here with a different book, which that book was on lock from like 6 months ago. But this book, I had it listed as an honorable mention, and it just, I don't even know what to say about this book. I couldn't, every time I look back at it as an honorable mention, I couldn't bear leaving it off the list to put some of these other books on it, because it is so much better than those books. Like, it just, not so much better, that's not fair, but it just, literally the idea of this not being on this list kind of broke my soul, because this is, and this is the first time a collection of short stories has ever been on my top 10 greatest books of all time either. But you know what? If it deserves to be here, then it deserves to be here, and it's going to be here. I don't care. But this is a collection of short stories by Ken Liu. 2 of these stories, I want to say, have won Hugo Awards. Actually, the amount of awards packed into just this one particular book that he has won from various organizations for his short stories in this, insane. Then these stories will break you. He will tell a 20-page short story, and you will literally be in tears by the end of it. And I'm not a person that's easy to make cry when I don't cry easily at books. But for some reason, Ken has just a magic with his writing and his ability to just skewer you right through the heart as you're trying to finish a book. And one of them, the Mono no Aware in here, I saw the ending coming from a mile away. You can see exactly how it's going to end, and it doesn't even matter. It gets really hard to get through those last 2 paragraphs of like his short story, because you can't even see the words anymore, because they're so blurry from all the shit that's happening in your face. It's crazy. It's crazy. Anyway, I will break the rules to get this onto the list any day of the week. Next up at number 6 is A Storm of Swords by George R.R. Martin. The 3rd book in the series, A Song of Ice and Fire. And I went into this not thinking that I would like it, just based on everything that you hear about the series, everything that you know about the series, everything. I watched Game of Thrones, the show, and then you hear things about the books. I 100% expected not to like this, or at the very least not love it, right? And I did. I absolutely did. I ate this series up. I don't know how high it would end up on my list of like greatest series of all time. It would definitely be in the top 10, but I don't know how it wouldn't probably make the top 5, right? I don't think it's that good, but it was a very good series, and this is easily the best of all of them. I know, super typical thing to say. I think everybody agrees that it's A Storm of Swords, but damn it, it's A Storm of Swords. You know, where I buck the system with not agreeing with Demon in White, I will agree with the system on A Storm of Swords, because it really is the best. I don't know what to say about this series. You know, it's the series of, almost said Middle Earth, Westeros, and in Westeros we have the Game of Thrones, and all the families are vying for control, and death and murder and sabotage and backstabbing and betrayal, and Lord Almighty, it's all happening all the time. You have like 100 POV characters, they're spiraling wildly out of control, and George has also been writing The Winds of Winter for the past 37 years, and I'm pretty sure he's gonna die before it comes out. That was dark. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, George. I didn't mean for that to go that way. Anyway, number 6, Storm of Swords. Up next, number 5 on the list, House of Leaves. Now, this is another really divisive book. Holy crap. You either love this book or you hate this book. This is considered a masterpiece to you, or you think this is the biggest steaming pile of garbage you've ever laid your hands on. Well, I think it's a masterpiece. Spoiler alert. It's number 5 on my list. It was wonderful. This book is like a puzzle within a puzzle. It is the story of the Davidson family buying this house that's somehow bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. And then entire hallways and rooms and chasms will appear inside of this house. And they make a record of it on videotape. That videotape is found by a man named Zampano. Zampano tries to categorize everything that happens, and he has all these papers, and he tries to get it down in a book, but he dies before he can complete it. And then another man comes in, and he tries to complete the book for him. So we're reading the book of a book of a book of a video, and we're reading the notes of Zampano. We're reading the notes of Johnny Truant. We're reading letters. There's footnotes. There are sections that are written right side up. There's sections written upside down. It is just the weirdest, most puzzle-like book. The book itself is a puzzle that you have to piece together. And the book of Zampano is like a book that drives people insane. And that's not a new concept, to have a book that drives people insane. But to have that book in your hands and actually experience what makes these people crazy, and then you kind of feel like you're going crazy because you're flipping forwards and backwards and to the front and to the back and to the side. It's great. It's so good. This is maybe, even if you don't consider this to be one of the greatest books ever written, whatever, I personally consider it to be one of the greatest reading experiences that I've had, because it was so genuinely fun and genuinely engaging to read. And I know that not everybody agrees with that. Like I said, super divisive, like crazy how divisive this book is. But I don't care. I thought it was wonderful. Next up on the list at number 4 is the third series that I have on this list, and it won't be the last, and it is Gormenghast. And I had to pick what's the best Gormenghast book, or at the very least my favorite, and I settled on Titus Groan. It was the first in this series. I think it's just, I don't know if this one's better or Gormenghast is better, the second book in the series. I love them both. I think I love them both equally. But I went ahead and I grabbed Titus Groan because it was the first. It's when I fell in love with this world and these characters and this story. I just died for this series this year. I absolutely loved it. I actually put a video up on it, and it shocked me how well it did. I'm like, I don't even know where it's at, but I think it's like approaching 30,000 views. I don't even know. It did shockingly well for a video. Anyway, Gormenghast is like a gothic fantasy series, and it is so stunningly well written. It's about a castle named Gormenghast, and this castle has been built for generations and almost out of control. It's grown so much that people can and do live their entire lives inside of this castle, never once stepping foot outside into the world outside of it. It is so large that entire sections of it are in complete and utter disrepair because they have been utterly and entirely forgotten about. Then the cast of characters that it takes place in here, the events is just completely ridiculous. The prose is so just amazing and wonderful, and not too particularly dense, but it's like reading poetry. Mervyn Peake in this book is painting pictures in your mind, but he's using words to do it. That's the kind of feeling that you get while reading it, with the prose and the writing and the structure. And then, like I said, it's like reading poetry, and it is, but then there's literal sections of the book where the characters will stop what they're doing to bust out into poetry, then just to go back to what they were doing beforehand. It's utterly wonderful and fabulous. It is just, I don't even know how to explain it. Go watch my video on this one. It does a much better job at describing what Gormenghast is than whatever the hell I just said here. Now, number 3 on the list, another series here, and for this one, it is Malazan. Spoiler alert. And I picked the book of both of them. I don't fucking know. I was absolutely 100% sure when I started putting this list together in my mind that it was Gardens of the Moon. Hands down. Not even a question, right? Gardens of the Moon. I think I'm alone in the feeling that this book's fabulous. Everybody's like, the worst book of this series. Wait till you get to Dead House Gates. And I got done with Dead House Gates and I was like, nah, it's Gardens of the Moon, 100%. That's my jam right here. This is way better than Dead House Gates. Now, the closer I got to filming this video, the more I'm like, is it Gardens of the Moon? Or is it Dead House Gates? I don't know. The more I sit with this one, the better it gets. Sometimes when you finish a book, the more you get away from that book, the more you kind of sour on that book, the more you mull it over and think about it. And sometimes they get better. I look back on this one much more fondly now than I did when I finished it. The more I think about it, the more I sit with it. It just seems to age like fine wine or something. I don't know. So at the end of the day, I literally couldn't decide. So you pick. I don't care. I think they're about the same. If you want in your head canon to say I picked Dead House Gates, and if you want to say I picked Gardens of the Moon, I don't really care. They're both great. Anyway, that's not the point. Malazan is number 3 on the list. And I say these books are just so fabulously written. The prose is wonderful. They're just dense. They're so beautifully written. I said in that video that you could take just about any passage from here and just read it verbatim, and it's just going to sound like I don't even know. They're so quotable, and they sound so philosophical and smart when you quote them. Then there's the character work. And I will say in the first one, I didn't think the character work was super over the top great because there's so much happening and there's so many characters happening in these books that I think I didn't have the ability to really get connected emotionally with them, even though I absolutely love me some like Quick Ben and Tattersail, and some of those characters I thought were fabulous. But by the time I got to this one, I started to realize I'm getting a little bit more invested in these characters than I thought that I was in the first book. He snuck up on me. He snuck up on me when I didn't even see it coming. I was like, I was like, no, I don't give a shit about these characters until one of them dies, and I'm like, huh. Maybe I cared more than I thought I did. That's interesting. When did that happen? And then I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. I haven't described these books. Malazan is the story of, I don't know, multiple continents, and all of these people in the Malazan Empire is spreading and taking over stuff, and we don't like them. They're the big bad evil empire. But are they? Because book 2 is going to make that a little less clear as you go through it. I'm not sure who the big bad is at this point. I just know that I'm just loving reading this story and this world. If you've read the Malazan series, my inability to sum it up and explain it easily might make sense. Otherwise, I'm dreadfully sorry. I'm failing at making this video today. Next up, and at number 2 on the list, it is my next book by Ken Liu, and that would be Speaking Bones. Speaking Bones is the 4th book in the Dandelion Dynasty series, and the Dandelion Dynasty, kind of Ken Liu's writing in general, took over my entire soul for a good portion of this year. It is so amazingly well written, so good. Everything about it is wonderful. He is so good. It's kind of crazy. And I would say Speaking Bones is my favorite in the series. It was so superbly good. I don't even know if I could have picked one up until Speaking Bones, a favorite. I don't know if I could have picked a favorite up until Speaking Bones, because it was just, it is the most epic conclusion to one of the greatest series ever, and it is so stunningly well written. There's a point in the book where it's I don't know how much more I could take, Ken. This is so epic, and so everything's paying off in so big of ways, and so my heart couldn't take it after a while. I was 700 pages in, dude, you got to stop. I just can't anyway. Dandelion Dynasty is the story of a dynasty back. It's kind of like the retelling of the Han Dynasty of China, but in a fantasy setting. He refers to it as silk punk. It is kind of like steampunk, but in this Chinese setting. This fictionalized Chinese setting. It's the series of islands. There's an emperor. He takes over. He unites all of the islands under one banner, but he's kind of like this evil, oppressive emperor. And then we overthrow that emperor, and we have these two friends that overthrow it, but then only one of them gets to be the emperor, and then his children take over from there, and he will eventually be phased out, and then we'll follow his kids as they move forward into the story and as they grow and age. And then there's these other, oh my gosh, it's so epic in scale and what's happening and how it goes from just these guys kind of rebelling against an emperor to this whole war with another continent. It is fabulous. It is so epic in scale, so wonderful. And then the writing of Ken Liu is just, I cannot express how good it is. He is another person that has like, go read his short. So if you don't want to get into some, this is thousands and thousands of pages. If you want to just dip your toes in the water, that is Ken Liu's writing. Go grab that Paper Menagerie and just read a couple of his short stories. See how you vibe with his writing, and then move on into this. Because the first one in this book series, The Grace of Kings, a lot of people bounce off of that one. It's a little bit drier than the rest of the series. It really becomes a fun adventure romp by time book 2 hits. But that first one's a little bit rougher. I've run into a lot of people who bounced off of The Grace of Kings. So maybe not start there. Maybe start with The Paper Menagerie and then move into this. But oh my God. If this is not just the greatest thing ever. Yes, I put it above Malazan. Go try it out and find out for yourself. It's so good. Now, number 1 on the list, greatest book that I read the entire year, yet another series, and I can't help but laugh at this one, because this is another one, 3rd year running, Claw the Conciliator, Book of the New Sun, took the top spot 3 years in a row. I read The Shadow of the Torturer 1 year, towards the end of the year, so it took that top spot. And then I kind of put it on the back burner for the rest of that year. And then I kind of picked it back up and I read 2, 3, 4, those books like back to back to back. But because I didn't start reading them until like late November, early December of last year, I read them from December into January. So technically, I didn't finish the series. I started it last December and I finished it this January. So what can I say? I read it this January. It's eligible for this year's number 1 spot. So God damn it, Book of the New Sun takes the number 1 spot, 3rd year in a row. So whatever, I don't even care. Gene Wolfe, way to go, dude. The Book of the New Sun is, I think I've said, like, it's like viewing the world through the lens of a kaleidoscope, but it is so far removed. It's like this fantasy series. It's a science fiction series from a post-apocalyptic world that's so far into the apocalypse that it now reads like a fantasy. And it's so obscured and it's so weird and it's so dense. And in this world, he'll be traveling through things that we would know very well, like a spaceship or mirrors, or just all the technology that they exist in and around because of the fact that they live in this post-apocalyptic world. But the characters don't know what this stuff is. This is just the tower that he lives in. He doesn't understand that these are computers and screens and all of this stuff, so he doesn't have the language to explain that to us. So Gene Wolfe will describe something for a chapter or two, or the space that he's in, and it takes you a very long time to really pick up on what he's trying to describe. And he's describing these computers and these spaceships and all of these other things because our characters don't have the language to tell us that that's what it is. It's so weird and dreamlike trying to navigate this world, and it is utterly fantastic. It is utterly fabulous. It is one of the greatest things that I have ever read, full stop. I cannot recommend the Book of the New Sun enough, and I cannot express enough that just how divisive this book is as well. This is definitely not for everyone. It will be very hard for a lot of people to read. It will be very hard for a lot of people to get invested in at all because it is so dense and it is so obscured. And even then, technically I read 2 of these books this year, one of them being The Citadel of the Autarch. Even then, this is not the preferred book of most readers. I thought it was great. I thought the ending was great. I thought the ending was pretty perfect. I enjoyed the ending of this so much that I have not yet gone on to read The Earth of the New Sun, because that is like the 5th book. He kind of tacked that onto the ending because people were like, well, that wasn't an ending. The people kind of wanted more of an ending. So he gave them the 5th book, which isn't really part of the Book of the New Sun, but it's like an extra thing. I haven't even gone on to read it yet because this was so perfect of an ending for me. Anyway, I will read it. Don't worry. I just haven't got there yet. And this year kind of blew up, and it really I got taken over by so many series, most of which are represented right here in this pile of books. Just absolutely fabulous. Best year of reading that I have had ever, I think. I wouldn't say I have books that I prefer over these books in my life, but as a whole, as a year with books that oh my God, this was the best, probably as a whole collective year that I've ever had. Anyway, what was the best book that you read this year? I really want to know. And as always, everybody, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.